Okay, I want to talk about two different kinds of events that you don't often see. Having to do with transitions and animations in your CSS, there's actually JavaScript events for TransitionEnd and AnimationEnd that allow you to trigger script to run when those things happen. So I have some default styling here on the page. I have 3 paragraphs on the page, and I'm targeting them with my CSS so that they're 90% the width of the page, but when I mouse over them, they're going to animate to 40%. When I mouse off, they go back. So there's going to be a TransitionEnd event that's happening. And I'm transitioning here the width property. So all this just to add some basic styling. I've got a little bit down here for the after so that you can see here whenever there's text that spills over into the last little line, or as I'm mousing over it, the text is going off the edge. There's a little bit of an overlay here to make this text look like it's a little bit grayed out as it fades away. Okay, so my transition is on the width. It's taking 0.6 seconds. And I've also got an animation here. So the animation says it's going to take half a second. It's going to run 1 time in the normal direction. My animation is defined as just being a change to the border, going from 0 pixels to 4 pixels thick back to 1 pixel. And it's going to run through this animation 1 time. If I were to come in here, save this, and then refresh, you can see there's that little animation, that little yellow border that appears just momentarily there, that 0.5 seconds. Now, I'm going to comment out the animation name. I can leave the other properties, that's not going to harm anything, but by leaving the name off, nothing runs on the page. So when I hit refresh, nothing happens. What I want to do is, when the TransitionEnd event happens, I'm going to set the animation name for this style to glow. That's going to cause this to run. When it's finished, it stops. And I'm going to wait for the AnimationEnd event to occur. When the AnimationEnd event happens, I'm going to set the animation name back to an empty string. So I'm going to be toggling back and forth between an empty string and glow. And I'm going to do that when the TransitionEnd event and the AnimationEnd event happens. So let's take a look at the script. Right now, waiting for DOM content loaded, I've got all my paragraphs selected. I'm looping through each of the paragraphs, the node list of paragraphs. For each one of these paragraphs, I'm adding a TransitionEnd and an AnimationEnd event. They're going to call the functions glow and no glow. Inside this glow function, that's the one that's going to run when the transition rather, is finished. So we could do a console.log just to see that this is happening, like this. And I will expand this a little bit, open up the console. Let's go to the console. There we are. Refresh the page. And then when I come in here, there it is. There's the TransitionEnd event. Happened again. In here, there's the TransitionEnd event. And again. So anytime that the TransitionEnd event happens, this fires. That means this function is going to run every time TransitionEnd happens. We don't have any animation on the page, so this one's never running, but this one, what we want to do is we're going to take EV current target, which is the paragraph that we've just moused over, and we're setting its animation name property inside the style object. We're going to set that to glow. All right. There we are. We got to the end of the transition effect. Refresh the page. At the end of the transition, we have that little glow effect that happens. I can do that on each one of these paragraphs. You can see at the end, it gets to yellow. Now, when I get to the end here, like you can see, that it's run 6 times, but I didn't get the yellow border effect at the very end. I only got it when it shrunk down to the 40%. I didn't get it when it came back to the 90. The reason for that is we've already got this name set. So this basically has been uncommented in the styles. These properties are now there, but we've set the iteration count to 1. That means this is only going to run once. It only wants to run 1 time. Doesn't matter how many times I mouse over now, the name is already set to glow. So I have to find a way of getting rid of that to force this to run again. Now I can put some other higher number, but then when I hit that limit, I'm stuck at that. Or it's going to happen a whole bunch of times the first time the TransitionEnd event happens. Again, I don't want that. I don't want to set this to infinite so it can run forever and ever and ever. I'm going to set the name, and then when the animation gets to its end, this animation, the glow animation, when it runs to the end, that's when the AnimationEnd event is going to happen. This AnimationEnd event is going to call this function, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to remove the name of that animation. So now there's an animation with no name that will run 1 time, which basically means no animation's running. So I'll refresh my page, mouse over, there's the glow at the end, and then when I move my mouse off, I should get it again at the very end. And every time I get to the end, so I'm toggling back and forth between glow being there and glow not being there. Every time it gets to the end, it's removing itself. So now the effect is there. Every time the animation ends, it removes itself. And every time the transition ends, that's what triggers adding the animation back in. So we mouse over, we do the hover, that triggers the transition. The transition reaching the end triggers the TransitionEnd event. That's what triggers the glow animation. And then the glow animation removes itself with the AnimationEnd. And that's it. That is the TransitionEnd and AnimationEnd events. That's how you can use them to trigger scripts running inside your code. So I hope you find that useful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. If you found this useful, please share it with other people. And as always, thanks for watching.